Welcome to LCRL's Liberty Alert in Washington, D.C. with your host, Dr. Gregory Seltz. Talking two kingdom citizenship, bold biblical principles for a robust public Christian life. And now, your host, Dr. Gregory Seltz.
Hello, I'm Dr. Gregory Seltz, Executive Director of the Lutheran Center for Religious Liberty. Welcome to LCRL's Liberty Alert. And today, our topic, we're going to be talking about, is it time? I mean, is it time for all of us to rise up against this cancel culture? You know, canceling cancel culture. We're going to maybe be talking about Alan Dershowitz's argument where he says, you know, we've got to fight this. This is just not how free people live with each other. And I guess we also got some good news from the Supreme Court today about stuff like this. So again, when we talk about this, what we're really saying is, look, we can agree to disagree, but we want to have a robust debate about these issues. And that's the kind of place we want to live in, especially as we try to be neighbors to another. So to have this conversation, I've invited on our Liberty Alert today, two folks, Cedric and Brian of the Cedric and Brian YouTube channel. And Cedric and I go way, way back, but Brian is a new friend. So today we're going to talk to them. If I was to categorize them, I think they bring common sense to the cultural issues of the day, West Coast version. And we bring kind of the same common sense to some of these challenges, East Coast version. But again, our job in DC is to protect voices like Cedric and Brian, protect the church, protect people like you and me. So Cedric, Brian, welcome to the Liberty Alert.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, pleasure. So, you know, talk to me a little bit about, first of all, why did you guys start this channel? I've been watching a bunch of these and one hit my mind and we're going to talk about that one today, but why did you guys start this and how's it going?
Want me to take that?
Oh, we're good. Well, it was something that started years before we even started back in November of 2019. But I'm going to let Brian run with it a little bit because it was something that was we thought about it 5 years before we actually started. But I'll let Brian run with that a little bit since it was his brainchild.
Yeah, it was just a hobby of mine was, you know, photography and videography. And then I thought, I asked Cedric, I go, let's do a show with you. So it was just going to be Cedric. And then we kind of sat down and we did like a test run. If you go back and look at our first video, just like how we met, and we kind of had chemistry on screen here. So we thought, let's just do it together. And then so I made this whole. If you see our mugs and the black and the white, so we kind of did this black and white theme, which I think is important today. So.
Yeah, it's a really big important thing too. In fact, you know, like I said, Yvette, she goes by Marie now. That her name is Marie Yvette Seltz. But my wife is doing a Through the Fire program, and it's kind of the same thing. We're trying to bring kind of this common sense view, this biblical view, or this conservative view to a lot of these issues of the day, because somehow they're being demonized as if they're somehow destructive, when in a lot of ways they're very positive voices in our culture, right?
Right.
Okay. Well, I've loved what you guys have been doing, and I love the channel. And so if you want to see that, you can go to the Cedric and Brian YouTube channel. Is that right?
Yeah, it's just if you type in youtube.com/Cedric and Brian, just like what's on Cedric's shirt here. And
It took us an hour to think of the name for the show.
Cedric, is that a medium now? Are you up to a medium now? Or
it's a smedium.
I buy all my clothes at Baby Gap.
You know, he was always a little light in the weight room, man. I hate to say that about my buddy.
That's how we met.
Exactly how we met. He took pity on me on the bench and said, "Hey, you need help there, fella?" And he saw Steve Urkel there and he said, I need to help this guy out.
Mendelbaum. Anyway, well, listen, I'm really glad to be with you guys today. I saw your program last week, and I've seen a couple others like it. You know, the Dr. Seuss. You know, it's funny. We've been talking about this thing called the Equality Act, which is actually the Shut the Church's Voice Down Act in the public square. And we couldn't get through. I mean, people were just like, oh, it's not going to be that bad. Then Dr. Seuss gets canceled, you know? And as soon as Dr. Seuss got canceled, all hell broke loose and people are saying, what's going on? Well, how did you guys address that? How did you guys get into that discussion? Because it's crazy when Dr. Seuss can't be on the loose, right?
Right. You want to run with that a little bit?
Yeah, we're always looking for topics, and when that one hit, we just looked at each other and we shook our head. And then you get the blowback where people say, "Oh well, he's not canceled. We're only getting rid of 6 of his books."
Right.
But it's like, okay, well, which ones? And then what happened is now there's teachers because of this. They won't even read any Dr. Seuss in their classroom. So basically, they canceled Dr. Seuss. So and we brought up some things on our video coming up where an Asian person happened to address it and said, "I'm not offended by this. I use chopsticks every single day." So and Cedric talks about this all the time. It's like, it seems to be the white leftists that want to be offended for all the racial minorities. So
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, how do Cedric, kind of talk about that? I mean, how have we gotten to this point where there's this group of people that's, Candace Owens spoke in front of the Congress, and there were these 2 white gals that were talking about the black experience in America and how they were challenging her and they were criticizing her. And she finally said, "Look, I'm black, you're white, you're telling me how this is for me? What's going on here?" Well, how did we get to this point?
I don't know how we got to that point. They just need something to fight. And like Brian said, it's always the white liberals that are telling the black people that they're oppressed. And then when you make a stand and say, "Well, no, I'm not oppressed. I mean, I'm just like you are. I'm smart. I'm intelligent. I'm industrious. I don't mind working hard." Then they say, "Okay, well, you're the wrong black person then. We don't want to talk to you because obviously you don't understand how oppressed you really are." And so they go and find someone else they talk to who bows down to the pandering.
Well, and to some degree, we think, well, this is crazy stuff, and no one really is going to take this stuff seriously. But it is becoming serious. I mean, it's becoming serious because it's aligning with places that have power to shut down your voice. So on college campuses, we're seeing this craziness play out all over the place, but it's bleeding into our culture today too. So, how do when you guys start to see that, we only burned a few of his books, I mean. How did virtue, and this is my struggle, how did virtue get associated with this movement, do you think? Or what do you think about that? That when people say, "I canceled that," everyone's they're proud of that. They're posting all over the place on Facebook.
I think a lot of it's ignorance.
Yeah.
And they've taken hold on the left. I mean, the left, as you know, they run the institutions like higher learning, now pretty much all learning, TV, movies. So people are just getting bombarded with it, and so we're the bad guys now for speaking liberty and freedom and kind of our founding principles. And that's kind of our basic ideology is live and let live, and the founding principles of this country. That's been reversed in pop culture. So
yeah, and what's that? Our culture's being attacked, and I say culture, American culture, but then black culture, because I'll speak to you about this, Greg, because I know you can relate to it. Back in the 50s or 60s, you had groups like the Temptations, who spoke about love and they spoke about family. But now if you look at today's culture and you look at someone like a Cardi B, and she has that song that's been hitting the airways called WAP. I'm not going to go into detail about that.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and you have a Beyonce who's like, be that female dog. Back in the day when the black family had mom and dad living in the home, we sang about love. We sang about family. And then the welfare state came into play and made it feasible for the black woman to disassociate herself from her husband, and then the family structure just broke down. I forget the stats exactly, but.
And you're talking, see, I know you guys did a program on Walter Williams. I'm a Thomas Sowell guy, and even this gal, Heather McDonald, and Cedric, you know this, I've been an urban guy for 30 years. So I've been working in LA, I've been working in New York, and the goal was always empower the neighborhood. Well, if you're going to empower the neighborhood, you got to empower the families, and the policies that destroy the family, destroy the neighborhood. And that's what we're dealing with in Chicago, in New York, even in LA. And yet we never seem to hear anyone apologize about that.
Yeah, whether it's Detroit or Chicago or LA or even.
Hey, don't start dissing my hometown, man. Come on now. You didn't hear me say anything about Detroit.
No, I'm being sensitive about that. But you take the father out of the home, whether it's like the major states like Chicago or LA. I'll leave Detroit alone.
Okay, thank you.
Or even Appalachian, when the father's gone, that causes so much distress in the family that it's hard to rebound from that.
Yeah, I mean, we were dealing with the Black Lives Matter issue on our program, and we said, okay, look, if we don't want government all in our business either. We believe in limited government. So if you limit the police in your life, then you got to raise something else. and it's got to be mom and dad. So if mom and dad go up, then police can go down. But if mom and dad go down and police go down, you just have chaos in the neighborhoods, and that
police and or gangs.
Yeah, and what's sad is, like you said, is that it's by design in some places. The policies actually lead to this, and we're saying, well, let's reverse those things. So, yeah, so, and by the way, for those of you who are listening in, when we say left, we mean secular progressive in many ways. The old basic kind of left-wing version of things in politics was more like a John F. Kennedy. He still believed in these principles, that kind of thing. Secular progressives are a different group. They don't believe in truth. They don't believe in objective truth. They don't believe in moral truth. They believe in libertinism. And that's what's in power today. So we're talking about that. Yeah, we're talking about this today. And I don't know if you guys got a chance to see Dershowitz's article that I sent you, but his basic point is everybody should be against this. And why do you think, in some sense, that doesn't play well on our TV sets? And when someone like Dershowitz, who's kind of been on both sides of a lot of these things as a lawyer, he says, look, everyone should be worried about people who can cancel people's voice.
Yeah, Brian touched on that.
That's why we try to make a distinction between liberals, and we call them leftists. I know you call them secular progressives. I just call them leftists. We make a distinction that's not liberal. In fact, like you said, the John F. Kennedys, the Dershowitz, very liberal people, but liberal people were about free speech. This movement is not about free speech at all, and that's why you're seeing people canceled. And we try to touch on that in every one of our shows too, to make that distinction. And I know Dennis Prager is another person that I like to follow. He makes that distinction all the time. These are not liberals, and what the sad part is, the old school liberals, the people that were Democrats when I grew up, they're buying along with this leftism, even though I know they're still liberals. They can't make the distinction, and they just follow suit.
Right.
Cedric, I talked about this one time. Remember back I think was it 2008, when the Marriage Act was in California, and we voted for marriage. And the numbers were 75% African Americans, 75% Hispanics voted for marriage. And it was the liberal, white elite of California voted against it, but they got creamed. It was 53 to 47 or something like that. It was a huge victory. And then their vote got canceled. The Ninth Circuit Court came and evacuated that. And you didn't hear anybody scream, about Black and Hispanic votes being, thrown out. And again, that's the culture in which we live, right? I mean, certain people get canceled, certain people don't.
Yeah, that's the sad part. And Brian touched on that. Like, we follow like a lot of people, like your Candace Owens, your Larry Elders, your Dennis Pragers. Right. And there are a lot of people that we don't agree with, like on the left. But when I say that, they shouldn't be canceled. They should be allowed to have a voice. Brian brought up a good analogy a while back. You're playing a football game. How that game's going to be terrible if you have no one to compete against. Okay, you have your side, I have my side. Let's compete. Let's make each other stronger. And let the American people decide, what, I see this team, I see that team. Now I can make my own decision about which team I want to root for.
Well, we've got these things. I hope you take a look at them afterwards too. They're called mom and pop papers. And we try to explain what we call how Christians engage the political realm without politicizing the church. And one of them is, it's terrible when the refs play the game. So we talk about how government's supposed to be limited and how we're all supposed to play. You're talking about actually eliminating a whole team. I like that one. That's a good analogy. But, we've watched games where the refs are making all these calls in basketball, or the refs are taking over the football game. And after a while, you want to turn that game off because you're sick and tired of them thinking it's their game. Well, that's what's happening in our culture today. I mean, the government's playing the game.
That's never happened with Tom Brady. I just want to make sure, because Brian will get upset. So that's never happened with the Tom Brady game. So wow. Now that I've said that, you can continue.
Now wait a minute. Now who's the Tom Brady fan? I don't understand. Who's? Hey, I'm a Wolverine, man. Come on. He's always been underestimated.
He hasn't forgiven Tom Brady for beating his Rams in the first Super Bowl. He won't let it go.
Oh. Well, my son-in-law Brent, when the Rams were here in St. Louis, he can't stand Brady, and he married into this family, and I was like, hey, I'm sorry, man, but we adore him.
I'm leaving. The interview's over.
Well, anyway, talk a little bit more about this, and do you guys know about what we're doing? Because that's the other thing too. I mean, sometimes I wish I had the freedom. in some ways to do what you guys do, because you just kind of come and talk about things as to how you see it with your friends and your neighbors. I kind of have a role that I have to be like the voice of how the church thinks about this. And sometimes I'm trying to explain to people, we're trying to just protect your ability to have your voice. And they actually get too nervous about that too.
You and I met at the university in Irvine back in the day, and despite my my conservative views and my beliefs, I intentionally leave church out of it, because unless someone has a Christian worldview, I can't have a conversation with them. And if I bring in Christ or bring in the church and they say, well, I don't believe in that, I'm done. But if I can talk to them morally, ethically, and logically, with my Christian faith undergirding all of that, then I can have a more civil conversation with them.
Well, and let me say it this way, and this is, again, part of our job is to express how God engages the world two different ways. So you just said, yeah, if you bring in Christ, I mean, that's kind of Christ is the answer to a lot of the problems. But God also preserves the world through things that he created in us as human beings, like our consciences. Everybody's got a conscience. God created us that way. The 10 Commandments are kind of written in there. And what's interesting is when somebody says to me, separation of church and state, I usually go, oh, I didn't know you had a Christian worldview. And they go, what are you talking about? I said, well, Christ is the one that said, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, give to God what is God's. God differentiates his work in the world. No other religion, no other philosophy, either they are pro-government, no church, or they're pro-church, no government. Here comes one that separates the two out and differentiates them. And so again, like you said, yeah, we can talk all day long about these moral principles, about these fundamental truths that are self-evident. And we can talk about all those things, and we can talk about why this actually blesses people with whom we disagree, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, my other thing I want to talk about before we close today is our worldview, or even our view of how politics should be, limited and should be in its proper role, like they're the referees and stuff like that. Why do people? How come we've been kind of tarred and feathered as being the bad guys? I struggle with this, because I know we got every movement's got crazy people in it. Okay, that's part of it. But our worldview actually, when you think about it, gives more freedom to more people and protects people's voice, even with whom we disagree, because even Jesus tells us to love our enemies. So how come we're the ones that get tarred and feathered as being the narrow-minded people and the closed-minded people and the homophobes and the bigots and all that kind of stuff? What do we do with this?
I think Dennis Prager said this good. He said people don't yearn for freedom; they yearn to be taken care of. Mm-hmm. So that side of the government is just saying, "Hey, we're going to take care of you." Cedric brought it up with the welfare state. They've convinced people that we're just going to take care of you. Don't worry about anything, and then they lose that yearning for freedom. I think this nation is separated into basically 50-50, and I think inborn in people, you have people that lean towards, they would rather have that freedom. We like the movie Braveheart, freedom. Right. And there's other people that just want to be taken care of. And I think since it's in the popular culture, they've convinced people that, oh, we'll just take care of you. We'll take care of you. And if we say, no, take care of yourself, we're the bad guys. Saying, well, how could you just say take care of yourself when we can take care of you? And I think that's why we're losing. Because it's so easy for people just to say, oh, okay, good, I don't have to do anything.
Yeah, I always tell people that, especially with younger kids, be careful about going with the flow. And I think that's what the left wants us to do, because going with the flow is so much harder, because what's cool in 1980 may not be cool in 2000, definitely isn't cool in 2020. So it's similar to that trout that swims upstream and builds its stream from swimming up there. Be careful going with the flow, because you never know where the flow is going. And I think what we need to do as people on the right is be strong, be firm in our convictions and who we are, and hopefully that'll attract people to us.
Well, I think what you both pointed out was that freedom and security have an inverse relationship. If you have more freedom, you have less security, there's no doubt. But if you have more security, you have less freedom. And I think the temptation, especially for young folks today, is they think you can have freedom and security. Unlimited. And that's kind of the lie, I think, that's kind of out there. And we do need to push back on that. And the other thing I would say, I like what you just said, is that, and I don't know if there's a quote by a guy named G.K. Chesterton. I love this guy because he was an agnostic. Maybe, I don't think he was an atheist, but he was a newspaper guy back in the day. And he came to faith, and he started to see that, the Christian worldview especially, or the conservative worldview, always seemed like it was putting up barriers. And people would say, well, that's terrible. He said, except when you see those barriers in their proper places, it lets freedom run wild.
Yeah. Well, the analogy of the football game, you can't have a game unless you have boundaries and rules. If you don't, you have total anarchy.
Yeah. Well, again, guys, final words about what you guys are trying to do. I'm going to let everybody know about who you are. So, again, I haven't looked at all your shows, so, but I love you guys. I love what I've read. Talk to me a little bit more about who you are, what you're doing.
Well, I'll let Brian end up. I'll just say real quick, it's don't let your voice be silenced. Whatever you're saying out there, let truth ring. What the left tries to do, like someone in Brian's case and in your case, Greg, is that if you say something, you're a racist. And then you find someone like me or Candace Owens who says something, and then automatically I get attacked by my people. And next thing you know, I'm a sellout. I'm a coon. I'm all that. But it's like, no, I'm just trying to share the truth with you. And it's weird because I never get attacked by anybody on the right. Yeah. It's like all my attacks come from people on the left who say, oh, come on, brother. And the next, they're calling me names, and no one on the right calls me names. So we have to speak the truth. Right. I'm not the intersectionality box. You don't
fit the right box. I fit, I'm just a straight white guy. So, I'm already the villain in this scenario.
Well, not necessarily. You are Jewish. You handle all the production of.
Yeah, that's right. He says I'm the producer because of that.
Well, I like what you guys are saying because, again, I always, even from my earliest days, because, I grew up in the city. A lot of times I was the only white guy in arenas and stuff like that. So I never saw this stuff the way other white guys see it. And of course, the black experience was kind of something that I saw daily with my friends and things. And I was always kind of an MLK conservative. If you, I don't want to break all that down. But like you said, he was looking at individuals and their character and all these things, and he wanted equal access. And so we fight for parental choice because we want to give black families and poor families and Hispanic families access to good education because that's how they get their kids out of poverty, all this kind of stuff. And we keep seeing people shutting all those doors down. And we're going, why would you shut it down? That would have empowered the neighborhood. It would have empowered stuff. So you keep up the good fight. I love what you guys are doing. I love the humor. Again, maybe if we do a few more programs together, I'll be a little bit more silly because then you can actually see what I'm like too.
I know how you are.
What's that?
I know how you are.
Yeah, well, I know you know how I am, man. And in fact, people who don't know us, he's R2 and I'm R1 because we one time ran a marathon together. Neither one of us is marathon types, but we ran that together, and that was so that I could start playing ball like I used to. So we go a long way back, and we've climbed some mountains together. So
I did consider canceling the friendship at that point, but I forgave you.
I got to tell this story, man. I got to tell this story real quick before Brian. This is just so you know a little bit more about your compatriot there. At the 13-mile mark, he's looking at me going, the farther we run, the better I feel, the farther we run. And I'm actually, the bear is on my back already. It's 13 miles. We got, 13 miles ago. I finally looked at him and said, shut up.
Wow, Pastor.
And then at the 21-mile mark, he stopped. He just stopped. He said, Greg, I'm not running another step. And I said, and I think I dressed you down in the 24-mile mark when they're all clapping and saying, you're almost finished. And I said, tell him that. And we crossed the line together, right?
That's a great analogy. We'll end up with that. Just like sports and running a race. I wouldn't have finished that without you. You wouldn't have finished without me. We locked arms and we crossed that line together. It wasn't about a black guy running, a white guy running. It was two guys running the same race, trying to finish it.
I did beat you out though, man. I did lean.
No, I won. I won by 0.2 seconds.
Well, listen again. I just want to say thank you for spending some time with me, and I hope this is the kind of stuff we're doing more and more of when we're talking to people all around the country. Our job as the Lutheran Center for Religious Liberty is to protect your liberty, to be the church, to be a moral voice in your community. We just think that setting freedom wild and virtuous, religiously motivated folks is the way to solve a lot of our big problems. And we sure don't need the government telling us how to live our lives. So again, thank you guys. Thanks for being a part of this with me.
Well, thank you for letting us come on. And like Brian mentioned earlier, if any of your viewers out there want something a little different, they want to check out our YouTube channel, just type in Cedric and Brian in the search engine YouTube, and we talk about the same things you're talking about.
It's great to have been with you guys today. Again, to all of our listeners, lcrlfreedom.org, lcrlfreedom.org, all kinds of resources there for you. Till we see each other again, be wise as serpents and harmless as doves, and realize that you have a voice that's needed in the communities in which you serve. God richly bless you. Have a great day.